I try not to go on too many political rants when I do videos, but what you see here is $91 worth of shit from Home Depot because they didn't carry 1/4 inch barb fittings. They didn't carry it in plastic, they didn't carry it in brass. Just this cost me over $28. What the f is that all about? Ugh. So after my $98, yeah, my $91 trip, I'm sorry, $96 trip to Home Depot for a $2 plastic fitting, which Home Depot didn't have, and I honestly didn't. Where I live, there's only really one place to go to get stuff like this, and it's Home Depot within a half an hour ride. Their assortment of this type of fittings sucks. All I needed was a barb. It was a barbed, 1/4 inch barb tee. Yeah, I could have ordered it from Amazon, but I didn't want to wait, I don't want to wait a week for it. So my laziness cost me about $50. Okay. I had a little bit of an epiphany while I was at Depot looking at the price of fittings. Thank fucking tweakers and junkies for buying them and then selling them or stealing them and then selling them for scrap. So I decided my OCD will not allow me to use this hose to flow fuel or oxygen into my torch. I can't do it. So this is the right stuff. This is 250 psi burst pressure, nylon reinforced. I'm fairly sure it's nylon reinforced, braided vinyl tubing. Okay, so I'm going to use this, but I'm not going to use it at the torch itself. My torch lead set here, is probably about 12 feet long, and it doesn't need to be 12 feet long. So I'm going to cut that off. Take these off, which I thought I already did. Oops. I bought new clamps too. Home Depot clamps, but I bought new clamps. I hope they're stainless. These are not. Oh no, these are stainless. These are good ones. Gold seal. Alright. We're gonna pry this off. Hey, that ain't coming off. Now these are brass, so I have to be careful, but I don't have to be crazy careful. Ugh, I'm gonna have to clean that. And actually, this is a good time to inspect the inside of your hoses. Everybody looks at the outside. Nobody ever looks at the inside, and these are in great shape. These hoses have lived a bit of a charmed life. They haven't ever really been abused. They've never been exposed to the weather. They didn't sit out in the sun. They were high quality Harris hoses when I bought them. I'm sorry, these are Halco. Halco? These are good. These were good hoses when I got them. I can't read it. Doesn't matter. They're good. They were not cheap. So we're going to pull all this apart here. Even the barb fittings are nicer. I'm not sure how that's going to fit on there. Okay, we're good. For some reason, these look bigger than 1/4 inch. I think they are. I think they're 5/16. But that's okay, because I had to force these together. That I remember, I had to fight to get these together. Alright, so I'm going to shut the camera off. I'm going to clean these up. I got a little red Scotch right here. I'm just going to clean the barbs. I may actually use I got a wire brush I'm going to use. Now, I think I need to point out here that this is actually 2 pieces of 2 splitters here. I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember where I got these things. I just know that when I put this system together, I had always wanted to leave these bungs open for future use, whether it be a hand torch, or in this case, I'm using my mini CC. I'm using my mini CC. So I need to take these bungs out. Oh, these 2 pieces are actually glued together with epoxy, and they have functioned flawlessly for 20 years, including a good 6 or 7 years just sitting in their storage box, and it hasn't failed me yet. Now, when I glued these together, I dimpled the whole thing. I cleaned it all up. I mean, I did a pretty decent job of gluing these things together. So I got to take these bungs out, and since all my friends like to be around when I f*** up, I figured I'd put this on tape, right? So let's... Ooh. Oh yeah, these things are tight. Now I had leak checked these. I leak checked these probably once. I'm not gonna lie, I probably only leak check these once a month, just to make sure that the hose hasn't degraded. And part of the reason I'm a little anal about this is if you watch one of my other videos, one of the other videos I did, I go into, we're gonna blow compressed air through these hoses to make sure that there's nothing in this before I thread this back together. The last thing that you want, there's no filters in this system, and the last thing that you need or want is a clogged jet on a torch. Now these are completely separate, so no matter what, my fuel and my oxygen cannot be combined. So this, even though this looks like even though this looks like one piece, it's actually 2. All right. Now I'm going to get a pick and carefully clean that out a little bit. All right, so yeah, there's a little bit of cheese in here that we're going to take off. Excuse my head. You'll be like, I was embarrassed by my bald spot, so I started wearing my work hat. It's not the greatest angle. Ooh. Looks to me like I also put a little bit of epoxy on these threads, or actually we're going to vacuum this out. I want this going. This is another case of it's never going to get messed with again once it goes together. So I'm assuming that I put the bungs in before I glued it together. It's been so long ago. Many years and many thousands of gallons of beer and Captain Morgan since I originally put this thing together, amongst a bunch of other things that make you forget. I'm gonna grab the vacuum cleaner. I'm not gonna mess with that too much. Doesn't need it. You couldn't see it in the video, but I actually opened my torch valves. I opened my torch valves when I vacuumed this out to make sure that if there is anything living in these hoses, I just sucked it out. Speaking of, I'm gonna grab a flashlight. There's something interesting. Would you look at that? Right. forceps. Hopefully I got a pair right here that close. None of those close. This right here is the kind of shit that'll ruin your day. You see that? That's a little brass burr. It's a little brass burr that came out of the inside of this fitting. That thing was, if that thing blew up and got into the seat on my torch, the valve seat on my torch, it would be a really kind of a bummer. Now, I bought these the other day at my local Ace Hardware. These are 1/4 inch NPT fittings. I'm going to check them just to make sure that they're going to thread in without fighting with me. I've had trouble with these in the past. I bought the ones from, these are a different manufacturer than you get at Home Depot. Okay, now there's a little bit of a debate when you do this. There's three levels of debate. It depends on who you talk to. If you use Teflon tape, there's no need to use Teflon tape because this is low pressure. It's low pressure. It's brass on brass, and it's a tapered fitting. Theoretically, you shouldn't need to use Teflon tape. Secondly, people are using, and I use it, a liquid thread sealant. I'm leery to use a liquid thread sealant because I don't know what's in it. I have good old-fashioned Teflon tape. Now, I checked that Teflon tape, PTFE, was actually oxygen safe because some sealants are not oxygen safe. Some gases, CO2 in particular, are corrosive. CO2 is very corrosive to rubber, which I did not know. The other thing we want to do is I want to make sure I don't get any Teflon tape, any little boogers, just like that, I don't want to get any little boogers in the flow of gas. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. The big reason being is if you're flowing gas through this line and you have a little booger of Teflon tape flapping in the breeze, eventually that Teflon tape might break off and go into your torch. Or, and this is one of those, you have a better chance of getting killed. You have a better chance of getting killed by a spree killer, eaten by a shark, or have a vending machine fall over on you and kill you. Theoretically, in an pure oxygen environment, a piece of Teflon tape flapping in the breeze could eventually create enough friction to ignite and burn. And once it starts burning inside, this is oil free, by the way. Once it starts burning in an oxygen pure environment, the hoses could catch on fire. This is the goofy, ridiculous, nonsensical shit that people come up with. I am not saying that's going to happen. Like I just clearly stated that you have a better chance of getting shot by a spree killer while you have a better chance of getting shot by a spree killer after a vending machine falls on you next to the ocean and a shark bites you. However, how improbable all of those things happening, no, it's very improbable that that's going to happen with your... Oh, yeah. Teflon tape. So we now have installed our bungs, or our nipples, or our barb fittings. Next step is I'm going to take the Carlisle apart and I'm going to attach it to the the manifold. I'm still deciding on whether or not I want to revisit this torch, this setup. There's a possibility I might do that in the future. Drop the nylon washer. Okay. Now we can move the phantom out of the way. It's done. It's done its duty for the time being. I'm dreading cleaning off that tape goo. If you have holding ability, use it. I do not like the fact that these are connected with barb fittings. I mentioned it in my other video, my introduction to this project video. I don't like barb fittings. Everybody uses them. I see stuff from overseas where people are using barb fittings on gas lines, and it makes a maniac out of me. I understand why. I mean, I'd be happier to see a swedged, like a factory swedged fitting on here, like my GTT, right? So it has factory swedged. I'm actually just going to cut this hose off because I am going to use a completely different hose setup for this. Get out my Bob Vila handy cuts here, and we're going to make this sadness go away. So just because this way there's just a close-up. This is the type of vinyl tubing that I see a lot of guys running their torches with, and these oxygen concentrators. I am leery to use this stuff. And I'll show you the product that I'm going to replace this with, which I feel slightly more confident in than this grab. All right. This all has to get cut away. I'm slightly curious to see what this hose looks like at the fitting. I wrapped this stuff up pretty good to protect it from the heat of the torch. The actual, like, I can't reiterate enough how hot this torch gets. It gets more than hot enough to make this cheap ass vinyl tubing at minimum pliable. Worst case scenario, it'll melt the stuff. And then you got a whole new shit show on your hands. Oh yeah, it absolutely did do that. Let me undo this one just to make sure. I want to make sure I haven't. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm gonna move the camera around a little bit here and show exactly what kind of shenanigans are going on with this stuff and why it's not getting used again. This camera has a pretty decent macro on it. I'm going to take these off. Now, I just assembled this maybe 2 months ago. Now, I understand that these worm clamps are pretty strong. And they can damage the hose. That's another thing I don't like about it. When I put this together, I did not heat the hose. I did not heat the line when I put this together. And I'm gonna do it just like this. This is kind of somewhat important here. Zoom in. This belling here, and on this one, and these marks are indicative of an excessive amount of heat applied to these to this vinyl. It might even be, no, it's actually still pretty pliable. I just put this stuff on. But that's telling me that this torch gets hot enough to damage this vinyl. Even with all that tape on it. Even with all that tape and all that heat protection, it was still hot enough to damage the vinyl. And that ain't going to happen again. So I need to go and buy, I'm going to go and buy a little bit, I'm going to buy beefier hose, better hose.